Well, soon, the man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers here in Washington, D.C. last night will appear before a federal judge. The suspect has been identified as 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, and he is accused of shooting Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky. That is a couple who worked at the Israeli embassy. You see him right here in this picture. Here's the moment the suspect was apprehended by police.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
CNN's Brian Todd joins us now live from the scene. We're also joined by CNN legal analyst, senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, and former senior FBI official Katherine Schweit. Thank you all for being here. Brian, I want to start with you with the very latest here.
Right, Pamela. People familiar with his whereabouts tell CNN that at this hour, the suspect, Elias Rodriguez, 31 years old, is in a holding cell inside the federal courthouse here in Washington, awaiting his initial court appearance, which is expected to come very, very shortly. In the meantime, we are getting some new information about this incident and about the suspect. Multiple law enforcement sources telling CNN this afternoon that there was a lengthy letter that authorities are investigating as being potentially authored by the suspect that was posted to social media last night shortly after the shooting. According to our sources, that letter advocated violent retaliation for the war in Gaza. As we know, as you just played on the air, the suspect chanted pro-Palestinian slogans as he was being handcuffed by police. And according to witnesses who we spoke to who were just inside the building last night, shortly after the shooting, just seconds after the shooting, in all the confusion, people were kind of coming in and out of the building. The suspect, according to witnesses who we talked to, came inside the building and kind of blended in with the crowd, sat down as if he were some kind of a bystander. He was actually looking pale and unwell, according to a witness that I spoke to, and some of the other bystanders actually offered him water. And then, moments later, when the police came in, according to witnesses who we spoke to, he stood up, he went over to the police, he raised his hands and said he's unarmed, and said that he did this shooting, and then pulled out a café and did what he was something similar to what he was shown doing outside there. He started chanting pro-Palestinian slogans. Now we, of course, know who the victims were. They are identified as Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, 2 young employees of the Israeli embassy here in Washington. The Israeli ambassador to the U.S. told us that these 2 young people were supposed to become engaged very, very shortly, that they were going to travel to Jerusalem next week, where she was to meet his parents. That's just the latest we know. We are now awaiting that initial court appearance, Pamela, and there is a news conference shortly where we should learn some more about this investigation.
All right, Brian, I know that you'll keep us posted on that. Katherine, to you, I mean, Brian just laid out the before and after, and it really is striking to me that this gunman allegedly went in and was sitting there and was offered water, and then once police arrived, you know, he said basically that he did it in Free Palestine. We saw some of the video there. As an active shooter expert, what about the gunman's movements before and after this shooting really stand out to you? What does it tell you?
The posting, right, of a statement is something that we're seeing almost every time somebody really wants to have their motivation be politically oriented, whether it's a hate crime or some other particular. So that posting is very indicative of, it's the first thing that law enforcement would look for, is to see, you know, what their movement was beforehand. The idea that he blended in is something that we see all the time, where the shooters in these cases, in these types of cases, this is really kind of a classic active shooter situation. And the shooter comes into the scene, but they make a plan to get there, but they don't necessarily make a plan to get out of there. And we saw that at Aurora Theater. The shooter stood outside the building until law enforcement came to get him. It's not unusual, but more important is how can you find them ahead of time? And it's really difficult to do in these kind of situations because they are one-off shooters. They come into an area. In this case, he came in to do this.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, instead of fleeing the scene, why do you think, just from based on studying past shooters, this alleged gunman would want to wait for police to arrive and then go up to the police and tell them that he did it?
I think it's a pride situation for them. They want to be able to say, I didn't chicken out, I didn't disappear. They want to continue to live out this valiant effort they see themselves undertaking. And in order to do that, they have to be part of the story, and that includes going to trial. That includes being able to yell at the scene as the law enforcement or people with their cell phones are capturing it. It makes him continue to be famous, and that's what he wants.
Ellie, on that note, what federal charges do you think could apply here?
Well, Pam, I think we'll find out by the end of the hour, and I think we should look for 3 different types of federal charges. First of all, hate crimes. It is a federal crime to commit a murder because of or motivated by the victim's race, religion, ethnicity. I think there pretty clearly was a biased motive here, an anti-Semitic motive. Second of all, look for terrorism charges. It is a terrorism crime to commit a murder of a foreign diplomatic official, as both of these victims were, if the goal is to try to influence or intimidate U.S. domestic or foreign policy. And again, those statements that we just saw, I think, provide some support for that. And finally, there are firearms charges. It's a federal crime to use a firearm in the course of either of those other crimes I talked about. So I expect for each of those crimes, for hate crimes, for terrorism, and the firearms crime, to see separate charges as to each victim here. And each of those charges, Pam, carries a minimum of life and a maximum of potential death penalty.
Do you expect the Justice Department to push for the death penalty, Ellie?
100%, I think that they will. It may take some time before we learn that, but if you look at recent history, DOJs under both Democratic and Republican administrations have sought the death penalty where we've seen instances of shooters like this killing multiple people with some sort of hate crimes motive. The synagogue shooter from Pittsburgh, DOJ sought death. They obtained a death penalty on him. He's not yet been executed, but he has been sentenced to death. Same thing with the Charleston, South Carolina church shooter. DOJ sought and obtained the death penalty on him. And if you look at this administration, they've been aggressive about saying they intend to seek the death penalty, and it would shock me if they don't seek the death penalty here.
You know, you have to look at just this in the broader context, Katherine, of anti-Semitic attacks being on the rise. How would you describe the threat level right now for the Jewish community and the concern of copycat attacks?
Yeah, I think that we've seen a steady increase in hate crimes against Jewish targets. And last year, I think the ADL said this was the first, last year was the first year they recorded 58%, I think their number was, of the incidents they recorded, which continue to increase, were targeted towards Zionist or Israeli efforts. But when it comes to how cautious should people be, what should they be doing, this was an incident where we saw prior crimes that were at protests and at events, sometimes, of course, at Jewish community centers or places where they worship. But this is a location that wasn't identified as one of those. And I think it's definitely a good cautionary tale that people who are out and around these buildings, no matter what their particular religious preferences, should be aware of the fact that those areas are becoming bigger targets for people who want to commit hate crimes.
Right, because Ellie, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was asked whether there should have been more security around the area where the event was, given the rise of anti-Semitic threats that have taken place. And she said, well, no one really expected something like this to happen. What did you make of that?
Yeah, Pam, that's something that'll have to come out in the investigation. But to the prior point, it is a sad fact of life, of Jewish life in America today, that you have to have armed security. I'm on the board of a summer camp, a Jewish summer camp. We now have, for the last couple of years, hired an armed security guard to stand at the entrance. If you go to an event at a synagogue, if you go to a bar mitzvah, a high holiday service, if you go to an event sponsored by the U.S. Holocaust Museum, anything like that, it is now common accepted practice. It's a sad statement, but it's true that you have to have armed security there. And I think this incident will only underscore that moving forward.
That's very sad. Stay there. We have some news coming in. I want to bring in CNN Senior Justice Correspondent Evan Perez, live outside the federal prosecutor's office in D.C. Evan, you have some news on the charges, right?
That's right. These charges have just been unsealed in federal court here in Washington, D.C., Pamela, and I'll read you just what the documents say here at the top. Murder of these are charges that he is facing. Murder of foreign officials, causing the death of a person through the use of a firearm, discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, and 2 counts of first-degree murder. These are the first federal charges now that have been filed against Elias Rodriguez, who is set to appear before a federal judge in the next few minutes. Now, this is his first appearance. We don't expect that he's going to enter a plea at this moment. And of course, this is an investigation, Pamela, as you know, This is still very early in the investigation that is still ongoing. There's still a lot more that investigators want to know about the suspect, about who he was in touch with over the last weeks and months, and whether there's anybody else who possibly could have been involved in this crime. And so those are still ongoing at this point. But clearly, over the last few hours, since last night and since the shooting deaths of these two people outside this event at the Capitol Jewish Museum, FBI and the Metropolitan Police here in Washington, as well as their counterparts in Chicago, have been digging into the background of Rodriguez, trying to make sure they know everything about him. And so these are the initial charges that we anticipate. There might still be more. One of the things that, of course, you heard from the Attorney General, you heard from FBI officials. One of the things they're focused on in particular is the hate crime aspect and anti-Semitism, clearly because he targeted this event that was being held by a Jewish organization here in Washington, D.C. So you can expect that they're going to keep pursuing that angle of this incident, and so it's quite possible that these charges may not be the final word on these charges that the suspect faces. Pamela?
All right, Evan, stand by for us. I want to bring back in Ellie and Catherine. You just heard Evan lay out that DOJ charged Elias Rodriguez with federal murder charges in connection with the death of those two Israeli embassy staffers. And Ellie, Evan noted that these are just initial charges and that there could be more. Tell us a little bit more about that, what your reaction is to these charges and why it takes time usually before a hate crime charge could be brought.
Yeah, so this all makes perfect sense. You start with the murder charge, you start with the firearms charges that we talked about because they're the most straightforward, because you don't necessarily at this point, just a few hours after the murder, have to prove the motive in order to bring those straightforward murder and firearms charges. This is just step one. These charges will, in all likelihood, be contained in what we called a criminal complaint. Now, that'll be followed at some point in the coming weeks by an indictment. And at that point, that'll have given DOJ and FBI more time to investigate, to look into the motives and the planning. And I fully expect by that point, as Evan just said, they're looking at hate crimes. It certainly seems that hate crimes charges will be justified here. And we've seen FBI officials reference the possibility of terrorism charges. But I think it's a common and smart approach. You get the murder charges on the books. You get the firearms charges on the books. That's enough to arrest this individual. That will certainly be enough to keep him locked up with no bail. And then you work on the more complicated motive-based charges over the coming days and weeks.
What stands out to you, Catherine? Also help us understand the difference of a murder of foreign officials. That's one of the charges here. What that actually means, what the significance that carries.
Yeah, I think it's obviously there's the political implications of it, right? We have to be very careful to make sure that foreigners who are coming to our country are safe. Our responsibility, at the federal level, state and local level, is not just to our citizens. It's to anybody who's on our soil. And when we create a situation here where people don't feel safe to come, it has its own ramifications, whether they're political or commercial. But more importantly, I think it creates a fear amongst the community, a fear amongst the people living in our own country that we can't keep people safe. And we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to assure people that we can keep them safe.
Evan Perez, to bring you back in, you have more information, right?
That's right, Pamela. Now, going through the complaint here that's been filed in federal court, one of the things that stands out, we heard last night from the D.C. police that the suspect, after allegedly carrying out the shooting, stayed on the scene, went into the Jewish Museum, and so according to police, once they arrived at the scene, they actually went inside and started looking for witnesses to try to talk to Rodriguez, allegedly, according to this complaint, actually approached the officers and spoke to them and said, "I did it," and said, "I did it for Free Palestine." And one of the things that you learn in this, according to prosecutors, is that the suspect, was outside, was noticed by some witnesses who believed that he was acting suspiciously. But the idea that after carrying out the shooting, he stayed on the scene, didn't go anywhere, went inside the museum and waited for police to come in and try to talk to witnesses. Again, it really gives you a sense of that he was obviously wanted to be caught and wanted to make his statement, as he did to the officers who ended up arresting him at that scene. Pamela.
All right, Ellie, so what do you make of what Evan just laid out there and how that factors into the overall investigation?
Well, I think that's really important evidence that prosecutors are going to use, Pam. First of all, to show that there was an agenda here. There was a specific political agenda. He wanted to get caught. He wanted to have a chance to make the statements that we saw him make, and that will be relevant both to hate crimes and to potential terrorism charges. So I think that's a really important development. Also, if this individual is going to make some sort of mental incapacity defense down the line, I think that conduct, the sort of pre-planning and the calm, intentional surrender, will badly undermine any such defense.
And we are expecting an update from the acting U.S. attorney coming up in this hour. We'll bring that to you live. Thank you all so much, Katherine, Evan, Ellie. We appreciate it. We'll be right back.